Hello there, I'm with Pavan Varma, National Spokesperson and General Secretary of the Janata Dal United, a prolific author and a former ambassador to several countries. Mr. Varma, my question to you is about a tweet that you had recently on Karan Thapar and in his book Devil's Advocate, in which he quotes you and which you denied on Twitter. And let me just read out your tweet, which says, surprised to, and this is what you say, surprised to see Karan Thapar quoting me and citing Prashant Kishore, then with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, in his book, The Devil's Advocate. Such a conversation with me did not take place as Karan recalls it, nor has Prashant ever spoken to me about Karan. The record must be set straight. This is your tweet.
Yes, it is.
And why did you feel the need to make
because I don't want to take this entire controversy any further. What I have to say, what I had to say on this matter, I've already issued on a public tweet.
Right.
Quite apart from anything else, I've known Karan Thapar for long, and I don't wish to take this controversy any further.
Okay.
I've said publicly what I need to say. Okay. But I believe that when writers quote somebody, they should either do it first by taking the permission of the person. If it's not a conversation on record, they should do it factually in an accurate manner, and they should check out their sources if they are bringing in a third party in.
That's right.
And if it's done unilaterally without any reference to the person concerned, then the record must be set straight. This is what I believe in. Absolutely. I have been official spokesperson of the MEA, press secretary to 2 presidents of India, and the national spokesperson of my party. And I believe that there are some ground rules of journalism which do not give sway to unilateral accounts of events which you agree with in terms of their content, and which in a sense convert every discussion with a journalist into a public statement.
Right. So you were quite upset about that he was revealing a confidence that he should not have had.
I was only upset by the fact that this conversation is not, as he writes, it did not take place in the manner in which he has put. Okay. That it was done without any reference to me or shown to me or pushed past me.
Right.
And then even if there was something that I had said and he wanted to put it, the least you should do is to check with the person.
Yes.
Because it's something that happened a year ago in a private conversation where he was explaining to me a background of a particular event. That's all. Okay. And I've said this publicly. I do not wish to take this controversy any further.
The reason for me asking you about this tweet was actually not so much about Karan Thapar himself, but the nature of the beast, which is Lutyens Delhi, or the elite, which is quite a very small elite, would you say?
I think India is changing. And by the way, I am not making any critical comment on the so-called Lutyens elite, because it has people of great talent and eminence in them also, who are well-intentioned and also do their homework and do so for and do so for the good of the country. So I don't want to make a damning indictment. Okay. But essentially, what did happen after 47, and you and I need to introspect on it also. I have a book called Becoming Indian.
That's right.
The Unfinished Revolution of Culture and Identity.
That's why my question.
That what has happened is that in spite of a mass-based freedom movement, the real inheritors of power after 1947 were a small group of people who spoke English with the right fluency and the right accent, had the right social background, and who in the initial decades came to power and ruled the roost.
Right.
Frankly, as a result of democracy and the empowerment of the rest of India, they have become, in many ways, and I say this, marooned islands, whose own ability to see beyond the world that they live in
Delhi or in
Delhi, a kind of, and for some of these people, a kind of rootless cosmopolitanism, which is a drift from both our cultural roots, a knowledge of our history, culture, tradition, folklore, etc., and our belief that they will continue to be judged only in terms of either their social background or the accent in which they speak English. They are marooned now. There is another India.
What is this other India? Is it Narendra Modi's India, or is it that when the Prime Minister comes to Delhi from Gujarat, something changes?
This development, Jyoti, took place much before Mr. Narendra Modi. When I gave the examination for the Indian Foreign Service, you could only write in English.
Okay.
Now people can give the exam in
This was in the mid-70s.
In 76 I joined the Foreign Service. But subsequently you can give the exam in any of the recognized Indian languages.
Right.
That itself is empowering.
Right. But what happens to Delhi? What the nature of the beast in Delhi? The power that is circumscribed within this so-called Lutyens.
Either they change or they will become relics.
No, so the fact that you had a Prime Minister who came from a state called Gujarat and comes to Delhi, this journey, does this create its own coterie, its own elite?
I must tell you that it's not the first time that this kind of Prime Minister has become the Prime Minister of our country. You are Mr. Deve Gowda.
Absolutely.
He didn't belong to Lutyens elite,
Right.
while Mr. I.K. Gujral perhaps did. However,
You had Narasimha Rao.
you had Mr. Narasimha Rao. So it is.
Although he had left Andhra Pradesh quite a while ago,
Yes,
but Deve Gowda is a good example.
But
he didn't stay long enough in Delhi.
In a sense, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, whose poems I had the great privilege to translate on Mr. Vajpayee's request. Mr. Vajpayee also represented in a far more credible and authentic manner an idiom that was not of Lutyens Delhi but of mainstream India, where Hindi or whatever language you speak, and we have great languages in this country, they were being represented far more than merely a small elite whose primary defining coordinates are English, English and English.
So these examples that you gave, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Deve Gowda and now Narendra Modi, now do you see as a writer, as a diplomat, as a politician, do you see that they bring with them their own elites, their own coteries?
Well, I think that each Prime Minister or any focus of power, and I've worked in both the President's office and the Prime Minister's office, will have a small group of people who are, let's say, the first circle of advisors or the closest to that focus of power. And this can happen even in the old Lutyens Delhi.
Right.
You had a situation where you had, there was a perception that Kashmiris seemed to be closer to power than others.
In the Indira Gandhi regime, for example.
It was there. And now you may have a perception that people, officers, say for instance from Gujarat, with whom the Prime Minister has worked earlier as Chief Minister.
Right.
If you have a Prime Minister from UP, you may find a certain preponderance of officers
So
from
it's
UP.
to do with the nature of power then?
It's to do with the nature of power, where whenever there is a strong focus of power, there will be people who are around that focus, who are closer to that person than, say for instance, somebody else. And you will see this across the world. It's not about India alone.
So do you think then that this Lutyens Delhi that you have referred to earlier, do you think that that's shrinking and that in a sense the real India of Bharat is taking over?
See, there was a small elite that took many of its entitlements for granted. Those entitlements are not only being questioned, you can see that geographically in Delhi. East Delhi has more money, very often, than New Delhi.
Okay.
West Delhi, south of South Delhi, the whole new swathe that has come up of Gurgaon. Where is Lutyens Delhi? There is a new class which has come up. Earlier, there were clubs where only a few people went in. Now, even if you can't get admission in those clubs, people have created their own clubs, which are even posher sometimes.
So do you celebrate this?
I celebrate the fact that India, a country of India's size and diversity, has far more empowered people claiming to be part of the great upward mobility spiral of an evolving India. And why not? And what is unfortunate is that the elite of Lutyens Delhi continues to very often live in very cloistered frontiers or enclaves with the same concerns which are no longer valid for a new India, and still relying largely on an old boys network of the past, on the manner in which they speak English, on very rudimentary knowledge of their own culture, not in a xenophobic way, but even in terms of having some knowledge of what your cultural roots are.
Mr. Varma, thank you so much for speaking to The Print. This is Jyoti Malhotra for The Print.